He is one of the richest men alive, married to a woman half of Hollywood showed up to see him marry. And yet the internet spent a week in March 2026 picking apart 10 seconds of red carpet footage like it was the Zapruder film. A shoe of the hand, a shift in expression, a husband stepping out of frame. That's all it took to reignite a question people have been asking since 2019. What actually happened to Jeff Bezos, and why does his story keep circling back to two very different women? This isn't a tabloid reconstruction with invented text messages and imagined inner monologues. It's the actual, documented arc, from a hedge fund office in Manhattan to a canal in Venice, and what the public record can and can't tell us about where it's heading. On March 15, 2026, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez arrived at the Vanity Fair Oscars party at the newly reopened David Geffen Galleries at LACMA. It was their annual tradition. They'd been going together for years, and this time they were also gearing up to co-chair the 2026 Met Gala as its lead sponsors. Sánchez wore a vintage John Galliano gown from the 1990s, roughly 85 carats of Lorraine Schwartz diamonds, and her hair pulled into a bun. Bezos wore a plain black tuxedo. Vanity Fair's own official video, posted to its X account, captured the two of them posing together, and then Sánchez gesturing for Bezos to step out of frame so she could pose alone. He did. The clip circulated within hours. Commenters were not gentle. Proof that money can't buy class, one wrote. Another joked that Bezos was being told to stop hogging the camera. A separate viral clip from the same event showed Nicole Kidman inadvertently walking through their photo op, which some outlets framed as its own kind of statement about who actually commands attention on a red carpet. Within days, gossip outlets and anonymous insiders had spun the 10-second clip into full-blown divorce speculation, with commentators claiming to read the look a woman gives a man when divorce is imminent and describing Bezos' smile as forced. It's worth being honest about what that actually is. Amateur body language reading applied to a few frames of video, amplified by accounts that specialize in viral drama. It is not confirmation of anything about the state of the marriage. What is confirmed is that the moment happened, that it was awkward, and that it became instant fodder for a public that has been watching this relationship for the better part of a decade with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. To understand why that clip hit a nerve, why so many people were primed to read collapse into it, you have to go back to where Bezos actually came from, and who he was before any of this. In 1992, Jeff Bezos was a vice president at D.E. Shaw, a quantitative hedge fund in New York known for hiring physicists and mathematicians rather than typical Wall Street traders. Mackenzie Tuttle, a Princeton graduate who had studied creative writing under Toni Morrison, worked in an adjoining office. Bezos hired her as a research associate. They started dating, and within roughly a year they were married. Accounts of the exact timeline vary, but the marriage was fast by any standard. What's well documented is what came next. Bezos had become fixated on the explosive growth of the internet and wanted to build an online bookstore. In 1994, the couple left New York, drove west, and Bezos wrote much of the original Amazon business plan on the drive. Mackenzie worked in the company's earliest days doing accounting and operations. She has said publicly, and Amazon's own early history confirms, that she was involved from the company's first year. The famous frugality stories from this era are also grounded in fact. Bezos did drive an older model car during Amazon's early years, and the company's first offices were, by multiple contemporaneous accounts, spare and improvised, desks made from doors, a garage-adjacent setup typical of 1990s tech startups. These details have been repeated so often in profiles of Bezos that they've become part of the standard origin story of Amazon, alongside Bezos' own frequently told anecdote about calculating a regret minimization framework before quitting his hedge fund job. Bezos and MacKenzie Scott were married for 25 years and had 4 children together. Amazon grew from an online bookstore into one of the most valuable companies on earth. In parallel, Mackenzie pursued her own career as a novelist, publishing The Testing of Luther Albright and Traps, both of which received serious literary attention. The Testing of Luther Albright won the American Book Award. Reports of Bezos' relationship with Lauren Sánchez, a former television news anchor, helicopter pilot, and media entrepreneur, became public in early 2019, alongside the couple's announcement that they were divorcing. The tabloid dimension of that split is also a matter of public record. The National Enquirer published private text messages exchanged between Bezos and Sánchez, and Bezos wrote publicly at the time that he believed the material had been provided to the tabloid through Sánchez's brother, Michael Sánchez, an allegation Michael Sánchez has disputed. The episode triggered a highly public standoff, including Bezos's own investigation into how the material was obtained. The divorce itself, finalized in 2019, resulted in MacKenzie Scott receiving roughly 4% of Amazon's outstanding shares, at the time worth around $36 to $38 billion, making it one of the largest divorce settlements ever recorded. Bezos retained voting control of his remaining shares and his stakes in Blue Origin and The Washington Post. Scott changed her name after the divorce, dropping Bezos and adopting Scott, her middle name, a detail she has spoken about publicly as part of stepping into an identity not defined by her former marriage. This is the part of the story that's easiest to verify, because Scott has been unusually transparent about the numbers, even while staying almost entirely out of the press otherwise. Since 2019, Scott has given away more than $26 billion through her giving initiative, Yield Giving, across more than 2,700 gifts to non-profit organizations. Her single largest annual total came in 2025, when she donated roughly $7.2 billion, more, according to Forbes' estimates, than Bezos and Sánchez have donated over their entire lifetimes combined, which Forbes has put at around $4.7 billion. That comparison has been widely reported by outlets including Fortune and Forbes, and it's worth noting precisely what it measures: cumulative dollar totals, not percentage of net worth, timeline, or method of giving, all of which differ meaningfully between philanthropists. Scott's giving style is also documented and distinctive. She typically makes large, unrestricted grants with no application process and minimal public fanfare. Donors, advocates, and researchers have described her approach as trust-based philanthropy, meaning she gives organizations money without dictating how it's spent or requiring extensive reporting back. Despite the scale of her giving, the Chronicle of Philanthropy left her off its top 50 donors list in 2025 specifically because she and her team declined to provide detailed figures, an irony reporters have noted, given that she has given away more than almost anyone else in the country that year. Forbes has ranked her the third most generous living philanthropist in America, behind only Warren Buffett and Bill Gates in absolute dollars donated, and ahead of them by percentage of net worth given relative to some other billionaires, having distributed an estimated 46% of her fortune. Her net worth, notably, has continued to grow even as she gives billions away. Simply because Amazon stock has appreciated faster than she can distribute shares, she's currently estimated to be worth somewhere in the mid-$30 billion range, roughly comparable to where she started after the divorce. While Scott built a public reputation around quiet, high-volume giving, Bezos's public life after 2019 took a different shape. He deepened his commitment to Blue Origin, his space company, which has continued its New Shepard suborbital flights and worked toward larger orbital vehicles. He remained executive chairman of Amazon after stepping down as CEO in 2021, handing the role to Andy Jassy. And his relationship with Lauren Sánchez became increasingly public, culminating in their engagement in 2023. Bezos and Sánchez were married in Venice, Italy, over 3 days from June 26 to 28, 2025. The event drew roughly 200 guests, including Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kim and Khloe Kardashian, Bill Gates, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, Usher, Tom Brady, and Orlando Bloom. Sánchez wore a Dolce & Gabbana gown for the ceremony, which she told Vogue was inspired by Sophia Loren and multiple other designer looks across the weekend, including pieces from Schiaparelli and Atelier Versace. Estimates of the wedding's total cost, reported by outlets including CNBC and The Guardian, ranged around $50 million. The wedding drew organized local backlash. Venetian residents and activist groups protested the event as emblematic of over-tourism and the commercialization of the city, and banners reading messages like "No Space for Bezos" appeared around Venice ahead of the ceremony. In response to the controversy, Bezos reportedly made charitable donations to Venetian cultural and environmental organizations, including a reported €2 million gift to Carilla, a consortium studying the Venice Lagoon ecosystem, though the wedding's organizers also stated at the time that they had structured the event to minimize disruption and prioritize hiring local vendors and staff. The timing that has drawn the most public criticism is genuinely striking, and it doesn't require embellishment. In October 2025, Amazon cut approximately 14,000 corporate jobs. In January 2026, just months after the Venice wedding, the company announced a second round, cutting roughly 16,000 more corporate positions, bringing the total to about 30,000 jobs eliminated in 4 months, the largest workforce reduction in Amazon's history. By mid-2026, cumulative corporate layoffs since 2022 had climbed past 57,000, according to CNBC's reporting, as the company redirected spending toward AI infrastructure and data centers, with planned 2026 capital expenditure reported at roughly $125 to $200 billion. Amazon's Senior Vice President of People Experience, Beth Galetti, framed the cuts as an effort to reduce layers, increase ownership, and remove bureaucracy rather than a response to poor financial performance. And indeed, Amazon's Q3 2025 earnings, released around the same time as the first layoff round, beat expectations, with revenue up 13% year-over-year and AWS growing at its fastest pace since 2022. CEO Andy Jassy has also pointed to AI adoption specifically, stating in an internal memo that generative AI and AI agents would reduce the company's need for certain categories of jobs going forward. The juxtaposition, a $50 million wedding weekend a few months before the largest layoff in company history, was widely noted by employees and outside observers alike. Worker advocacy groups, including Amazon Employees for Climate Justice, publicly stated that the layoffs had damaged morale, and reporting from CNBC in mid-2026 described widespread burnout and anxiety among corporate staff navigating a saturated tech job market. None of that reporting draws a direct causal line between the wedding spending and the layoff decisions. Amazon has framed the cuts as a structural, AI-driven reorganization, but the optics were unavoidable and multiple outlets covered the contrast explicitly. Here's where it's important to separate two very different categories of claim. Verified, on the record, the timeline of the D.E. Shaw courtship and 1994 move to Seattle, the 2019 divorce and settlement amount, MacKenzie Scott's name change and $26 billion plus giving record, the 2025 Venice wedding and its reported cost, the Venetian protests, the 2025 to 2026 Amazon layoffs and their scale, and the March 2026 Vanity Fair red carpet clip itself. Speculation, not verified. Any claim about what Bezos or Sánchez were privately feeling in that 10-second clip. Rumors of a 1-year limit on the marriage circulating in gossip outlets and anonymous social accounts. Claims from unnamed insiders about who wanted what kind of wedding, and any narrative asserting that Sánchez orchestrated a psychological transformation of Bezos over the years. These claims show up across entertainment sites that source from unnamed insiders or explicitly speculative social media threads, and none of them have been confirmed by either Bezos or Sánchez. Reporting on Sánchez's appearance changes over the years is also almost entirely composed of outside speculation by commentators and plastic surgery experts analyzing photographs,